Welcome to Revenge Report. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let's dive in. I heard him before I saw him. His laugh hit first, loud, forced, sloshing over the rim of his glass. Then the words, clear as day, over the hum of cocktail chatter. "She's just a mall security manager," he said, swinging his whiskey toward a knot of finance guys in suits that probably cost more than my car. Not every kid ends up changing the world, right? My gut dropped. The group around him chuckled politely. Some glanced over, not sure if it was okay to laugh. My father didn't care. He took a long sip, leaned back like he was holding court. I didn't flinch. I'd heard worse from him behind closed doors. But public? At the retirement gala for Alan Merrow, the same CEO he's worshipped since I was in middle school? That was new. I was standing maybe 10 feet away, holding a ginger ale I hadn't touched. I kept my shoulders square, my face blank. But I saw it. Jake Warren standing just off my father's shoulder, freezing mid-sip. He blinked, looked at me, then back at Paul, like his ears had betrayed him. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. Jake wasn't laughing, not anymore. My father kept going. We tried to steer her toward real work. Careers with futures, but she likes chasing shoplifters. Who am I to stop her? More laughter, looser this time. The kind that comes when no one's brave enough to push back. Jake turned slowly and took one step toward me. "Excuse me," he said, loud enough to carry. He stepped into the circle, his glass lowered, his face unreadable. "Sir, with respect, that woman is my regional director." The room cracked. The smiles dropped. The group went silent like someone had cut the music. My father turned to Jake, still chuckling like it had to be a joke. Jake didn't move. "She ran point for my entire team overseas. She's not mall security. She's the reason I'm standing here." He turned, faced me, and snapped into a salute. I didn't return it. I nodded, just once. That was enough. My father's face drained. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. His eyes darted around the room, realizing the attention had flipped. People were watching me now. Not him, not Jake, me. And for once, they weren't laughing. Someone muttered, "Wait, that's her?" The silence held just long enough for the senator's wife to step forward and offer her hand. "Director Morgan, I thought I recognized you." I stepped toward her, shaking her hand firmly. Behind me, my father's glass clinked softly as it touched the floor. The clink of my father's glass hitting the floor echoed in my head the whole drive home that night. But a month before that, same man, different room, I'd already seen it coming. It was a Sunday dinner. Roasted chicken, overpriced wine, and that fake family warmth that always came with the smell of garlic bread and polite contempt. My mom had gone all out like she always did when Paul was in one of his networking moods. My brother Tom was late, but that didn't matter. My dad had a captive audience, me, my mother, and his latest obsession, Jake Warren. Not in person, of course. Jake wasn't there, but his face was. On a stupid newsletter Paul printed in color and laid across the dinner table like it was a trophy. "Check this out," he said, grinning as he tapped the paper. "Jake Warren, ex-Army, picked up by Greenridge Cyber Defense, just married the founder's daughter. That's what I call building a future." I reached for the salad. "Yeah, I know Jake." He didn't hear me, or he pretended not to. They're giving him oversight on infrastructure contracts. Guy's barely 30, already doing speaking gigs. He chuckled, shaking his head. Makes you wonder what some people are doing with their time. "Dad, I trained Jake at my last post." He looked up, blinked once. "What do you mean?" "I mean, he was part of my team before Greenridge poached him. We ran 4 major ops together. I just got promoted too. Regional director. I oversee private counterintel for..." He waved his hand like I'd sneezed during grace. Yeah, your mystery security work. We're proud of you," he said, already turning the page. "But this is real movement, real-world stuff. Strategic security, government contracts, marriage into the right family. He's not chasing shoplifters or writing parking tickets." "Before we go further, how's your day going, and where are you listening from?" He folded the newsletter and slid it across the table toward me. "This is the kind of man you should have married instead of chasing parking lot criminals." I didn't move. My fingers tightened around the fork, just enough to make my knuckles pop. My mom gave a weak laugh. "Paul, don't be rude." "I'm not being rude, I'm being honest. She's 36 and still playing mystery games. Meanwhile, guys like this, he pointed at the paper, are running the world. I stood up to clear my plate. No one else was finished eating, but I didn't care. You have no idea what I do, I said, not loud, not soft, just enough to cut through the room. He leaned back in his chair. And whose fault is that? I carried my plate into the kitchen and ran the water so hot it steamed up the sink. I could hear them still talking, my mother trying to change the subject, Paul diving into some anecdote about Tom's latest deal in Miami. Jake's face was still sitting on the table, beaming from the newsletter like some golden boy mascot. What burned wasn't just the dismissal, it was the irony. Jake Warren hadn't just worked under me. He'd almost lost his damn life under my command. I'd pulled him out of a digital ambush in Krakow, rerouted his whole extraction plan after our internal protocol collapsed. He'd called me the only reason I made it back. But to Paul, he was the kind of man I should have married. I dried my hands, grabbed my keys, and walked straight past the table. My mother called after me. Stay for dessert? Like sugar could fix any of this. I've got work, I said. Not a lie. Out on the porch, the air felt sharp and honest. For a second, I thought about texting Jake. But I wasn't ready yet. Not then. That night just confirmed what I already knew. They'd never see me for what I was, not until I made them. I didn't go to Sunday dinners much after that, and when I did, I stayed quiet. Let them talk about their world like I didn't live in a different one entirely. My father's world was tailored suits, LinkedIn articles, and overpriced steak dinners with people who spoke in buzzwords. Accomplishments, to him, were printed and framed. Investment returns, speaking gigs, someone marrying someone with a name. Mine? Mine lived in redacted reports and encrypted drives. It didn't get clapped for. It got buried, classified, and sometimes paid out in silence and scars. 2 Christmases ago, the gap couldn't have been clearer. Tom had just made junior partner at some boutique VC firm. I flew in straight from Eastern Europe. No sleep, no applause. My suitcase still smelled like smoke. I showed up late, walked into a house full of people I barely recognized. Half of them were already drunk, toasting my brother's grind set. He raised his glass, grinning like he'd just cured cancer. Paul passed out vintage champagne like it was liquid gold. To Tom, he said, clinking glasses, finally making his mark. We couldn't be prouder. I stood in the back, still in my coat. Quick question. While you're listening, tell us which country you're watching from. Nobody noticed I was there. Later that night, after the house quieted down and the charcuterie board had been picked clean, I cornered my mom in the laundry room. It was the only place in the house without LED garlands or fake snow. I kept my voice low. They tapped me for Black Trace. She blinked. What's Black Trace? Private recovery, corporate espionage, and hostile countermeasures. Quiet stuff. Very selective. She folded a towel, then hesitated. Don't tell your father. That was it. No hug. No, I'm proud of you. Just another secret to keep tucked under the tree. I nodded like it didn't matter. Like I didn't just spend 3 days rerouting servers across 3 countries while trying to keep Jake and his team alive. Like I wasn't running voice command while breathing through a cracked respirator under 4 inches of concrete. Because that's where I had been. Bunker-level safe house on the edge of Krakow. Everything sealed and humming with tension. The lighting was low, the walls were damp, and the only sound was breathing and the occasional code ping. Jake's voice came in scrambled, thick with panic. We're losing visibility. We've got heat at every door. I kept mine level. Hold your post. Follow alpha redirection. Do not break position. He hesitated. Confirming? You're rerouting access? Already did it. You've got 4 minutes before external failsafes trigger. Move. There was no applause when we pulled it off. No speech. Just a green light across the board and an exhausted team that knew who to thank without saying it out loud. Out there, I was trusted. Followed. Respected. Back here, I was still the one who parked cars. Paul liked to joke about my job when clients asked, "Oh, Morgan, she's in security. Think Paul Blart, but more government-y." He'd laugh. They'd laugh. I'd smile, sip whatever was in my glass, and remind myself that reality didn't need their permission. But it still cut, every damn time. I don't need parades or headlines. I chose this life knowing the work would never be public. But some part of me still wanted them to see it, just once. To understand that I'm not some burnout with a flashlight, I'm the reason some very powerful people sleep at night. And if they weren't going to hear it from me, then fine. they'd hear it another way. I got as far as the sink before she followed me in. Morgan, my mom said softly, holding the edge of the counter like it might anchor her. Please, go easy on him. I didn't answer. I was still staring out the kitchen window, watching their neighbor's porch light flicker. He just doesn't get your world, she added, like that excused anything. I turned around slow. That's the point. He refuses to. She lowered her voice, even though we were alone. You know how he is. He's old school. If he can't see it, he doesn't believe it. I kept my hands on the sink. Then maybe it's time he saw it. She flinched at that. Just a little. Like the idea scared her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. That night, I drove straight back to my apartment, pulled the blackout shade down, and locked my phone into secure mode. No music, no TV, just me, my terminal, and the sound of my breathing. This wasn't a fight. I wasn't going to argue with anyone. I was going to do what I did best, set the field, flip the balance, and let the truth do the heavy lifting. I thought about every op I'd ever run. The successful ones always had one thing in common. No drama, no warning, just precision. Control the moment. Don't react. Architect. Before I started, I made tea. Ritual helped, something calm to offset what was coming. Then I keyed in the encrypted line and called Jake. He picked up after 2 rings. Director, he said, professional, clipped. You're still cleared for next month? Yes, ma'am, green light confirmed. There was a pause. I knew he was waiting for something else. It's the Marrow GALA, I said. My father's obsessed with the guy. He let out a breath. Understood. They'll be there. My family. They don't know what I do. He didn't hesitate. Then they don't hear from me. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Thank you, I said. Quick note. Before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Then he added something. Quiet, almost offhand, but not really. My respect for the chain of command doesn't stop at work. That landed harder than he knew. I stared at the screen after we disconnected, my tea untouched. He didn't say it for show. He didn't need to prove anything. He meant it. And I knew right then, the fuse was lit. This wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about letting the truth drop where it needed to. Not by yelling, not by pleading, by showing. One controlled moment. That's all it would take. The rest would burn on its own. The ballroom was bright, too bright. Every table lit like a stage. Every guest either trying to be seen or pretending they didn't care if they were. I didn't need the spotlight. I wore a plain navy dress, hair pulled back, heels low. No sparkle, no statement. Just enough polish to pass without drawing eyes. The kind of outfit that makes people forget you were even there. That was the goal. I stayed near the back, circling the edge, listening more than speaking. Waitstaff passed by with trays of shrimp and champagne. I nodded when offered, took 1 glass for cover, didn't drink. Near the stage, Paul was already in full performance mode. Tie loose, drink in hand, holding court like the mayor of somewhere that mattered. And this one, he said, clapping Jake on the shoulder. Sharpest hire Greenridge has made in a decade. The kid's going places. The group around them nodded. Some city commissioners, a real estate developer, a former NFL tight end turned fintech guy, all hungry for stories and status. And Paul was serving both. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted across the room. When they landed on me, the look was the same. Tired, vaguely embarrassed, like I was some failed project he couldn't return. I didn't blink. I didn't smile. Let him think it. That was the setup. Jake played it smooth. He shook hands, answered questions, offered just enough charm without tipping too far into showy. He kept his distance from me like we'd barely met. It was perfect. Quick note, while you're listening, tell us which country you're watching from. The crowd moved in waves. Conversations shifted, small clusters formed and dissolved. I followed the flow like a shadow, noting who was talking to who, watching the arc of attention build around Jake. One woman, gray dress, pearl earrings, sharp eyes, tilted her head when she saw me. It took her a second, but then she nodded. Senator Raines's wife, Brussels, 3 years ago. Asset extraction disguised as a diplomatic reception. I'd posed as one of her aides. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She just kept walking. But I caught the flicker in her expression. Recognition, respect. Good. The game was in motion. Back at the stage, Paul had shifted stories again. Now it was about how he mentored young professionals through business development. He gestured to Jake like a prize he'd built from scratch. Every time he opened his mouth, the lie grew. And every time he looked at me, I let him see exactly what he wanted. A disappointment in a basic dress, sipping the same champagne as the caterers, standing still while the real stars worked the room. I let it sit, let the smugness settle across his face like armor, because that's what he'd built this whole fantasy on, that I was forgettable, that I wouldn't show up, that I didn't belong. Fine. Let him believe that a little longer. Let everyone relax into the script they thought they knew. I checked the time. The next cluster was forming. Bigger names now. Investors, media guys, people who made things move. Jake was being walked over. I took a step back into the shadows. It was almost time. The next group he pulled in was bigger. State-level investors, 2 mayors, and someone from a defense subcontractor whose name I didn't bother catching. Jake stood beside him, glass in hand, still playing the rising star. Paul leaned in, voice just loud enough to carry. You know, I always say, people like Jake, they get it. Discipline, strategy, real leadership. Not everyone's wired like that. He let the comment hang before smirking in my direction. I hadn't moved from my post near the back. He knew I was listening. One of the men chuckled, politely clueless. You have kids, Paul? Oh, yeah, he said, puffing up. Sons in venture capital. Just got back from Dubai. He paused. I could feel it coming. And my daughter? He made a face like he bit into something sour. Let's just say she prefers more humble work. Jake shifted slightly, still sipping. Paul raised his glass, gesturing toward me like I was part of the decor. Mall security. We're hoping she grows out of it. The group laughed, light, awkward, unsure if it was okay. Jake didn't laugh. He froze, glass halfway to his lips. He set it down slowly, shoulders stiff. Nobody noticed, yet. Paul kept going. We tried steering her toward federal work, real contracts, but she's always been stubborn, always had to do things her way. You know how girls are. More laughter, a few headshakes, the tight smiles of powerful men pretending to relate. Jake stepped back, smoothed his jacket, and quietly said, "Excuse me?" He didn't wait for permission. He walked, straight across the ballroom, calm and steady like he was approaching a live device. I watched his eyes, locked, clear, unshaken. He stopped right in front of Paul. "Sir," he said evenly, "I need to correct something." Paul blinked, still smiling. "What's that?" Jake turned to the group. "You're laughing at the woman who runs one of the top covert intel divisions in the country." The room tightened. "She's not mall security. She's my regional director." The laughter died instantly. Jake's voice didn't waver. "That woman was the one who saved my team when we were deep in hostile territory. You remember the data breach in Krakow? That was us. She got us out." Paul stared at him like he'd just spoken Russian. Jake stepped aside and faced me fully. "Director Morgan," he said loud enough for the room to hear, "it's an honor to serve under your command." That was the detonation. People turned. The noise fell out of the air. Even the servers froze mid-step. Paul's face cracked. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something close to panic. "Wait, what?" he stammered. "That's not... She never said..." One of the investors squinted. "You work for her?" Jake nodded without looking away from me. "She's the reason I'm standing here." A few guests stepped back from Paul like he might explode. He looked at me now, but it wasn't disdain anymore. It was fear, not physical fear, status fear. The kind that hits when the story you've built starts to fall apart. Behind him, someone whispered, "She's with Black Trace?" Another voice, "I thought she looked familiar." The senator's wife reappeared beside me, offering a small nod like this was the second half of a puzzle she'd already solved. "Quick question. Do you think Jake went too far? Or did he do the right thing? Drop your answer in the comments." A ripple passed through the room, like energy snapping a line. I stepped forward, just once, and nodded at Jake. "Thank you, Analyst Warren." He stood straight. "Yes, ma'am." Nobody was laughing now. They were watching. And for the first time, they saw exactly who I was. Paul's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "But wait, how..." He sputtered. "Why didn't anyone... She never... How could this be?" He looked around like someone might jump in and explain it for him. No one did. Jake didn't flinch. "That's Regional Director Morgan." He said it calm, clear, without hesitation. A declaration, a correction, a line in the sand. And just like that, something shifted. A man in a slate suit stepped forward from the cluster. I recognized him. City Commissioner from Phoenix, big on infrastructure and risk assessment. "I've heard of the operation in Budapest," he said, reaching out to shake my hand. "That was your unit?" I nodded once. "It was." He smiled, genuinely. "Impressive work. Quiet footprint, clean exit. You don't see that often anymore." I shook his hand. Firm, direct, no theatrics. That's when the ripple started. Not the loud kind, just small, precise movements. A few heads turned, a few voices lowered. Then people started to shift, subtly, in my direction. They didn't look confused. They looked curious, interested, respectful. Paul stepped back, eyes wide, like the ground had moved underneath him. My mother joined him near the bar, her posture tight, one hand nervously smoothing her blouse. Neither of them said a word. They didn't come back. They left before dessert, slipping out the side door like guests who'd overstayed their welcome. Fine by me. More guests approached. A man from a regional energy firm asked about data vulnerability on Eastern contracts. Someone from a state senator's office asked if I consulted. A woman from a private aviation group said she'd heard whispers of a Budapest cleanup and always wondered who ran it. No one laughed. No one dismissed me. They just listened. Closely. Quick note. Before we wrap, tell us which city you're watching from tonight. Jake stayed near, but quiet. Let the shift happen without adding to it. Then, from the edge of the crowd, I saw her, tall in a black dress, walking with purpose. His wife. I hadn't spoken to her since their wedding. She moved straight toward me and stopped, hands clasped in front of her, eyes steady. "He told me," she said softly, "that you're the reason he's alive." I didn't deflect. I didn't brush it off. I just nodded. She smiled. Not big, not performative, just honest. Then she stepped aside and let me pass. I walked toward the back of the room where it was quieter, the noise fading behind me. I didn't need to stay. I'd already done what I came to do. People saw it now. Not just a moment, but me. All of it. The work, the weight, the discipline, the truth. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt seen. That was enough. I stepped out onto the balcony, letting the cooler air hit my face. Champagne still in hand, untouched. Behind me, the ballroom hummed. Conversations kept going. But the center of gravity had shifted, and this time, it had shifted to me. A year later, I stood on dry ground, boots sinking into hot Nevada dust, watching the wind kick grit across the horizon. No lights, no cameras, no applause. Just silence, sun, and the few people who actually mattered. Jake stood across from me, back straight, jaw set, eyes forward, full uniform, spotless. He looked sharper than he did in a tux. I held the box in both hands. The commendation rested inside, simple and earned. "Analyst Warren," I said. My voice carried just enough to rise over the wind. "Your work over the last 3 quarters has exceeded operational expectations. Your discretion, adaptability, and leadership have saved lives, quietly and effectively." No reaction from him? Not yet. He knew the drill. "You've proven capable of leading under pressure, of executing with precision, and of protecting the chain of command without hesitation." I opened the box and stepped forward. "In recognition of your service, I promote you to lead analyst, effective immediately." He dipped his head as I pinned it to his chest. 2 inches to the right, clean placement, no wasted motion. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. I nodded once. "Well earned." Behind him stood 6 others, our circle, all cleared, all loyal. People who'd been in cold rooms, hidden bunkers, the back ends of foreign networks no one ever heard about. No clapping, no ceremony beyond what we gave each other. This wasn't about recognition, it was about trust. Quick check-in. Who's watching from the desert states? Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico? Let us know in the comments. Jake stepped back into line, still holding posture. The weight of the pin new but deserved. I looked out over the team. Burnt ground. Steel targets half a mile out. Old surveillance drones grounded near the edge of the gravel. Nothing fancy, no banners. But this was mine. This was where the real things happened. Not at galas, not in networking circles or photo ops. Here, in the dry heat with people who didn't need to be convinced of who I was. I saw one of the tech leads smirk faintly, like he knew I wasn't one for speeches. He was right. The words were done. The work spoke for itself. I turned to dismiss the group. Back to rotation in 10. Until then, hydrate or die. They laughed, tight, brief, respectful, and dispersed without hesitation. Jake caught my eye on the way out. Director, lead analyst. We didn't say more. Didn't need to. The pin was still shining on his chest as he headed back toward the trucks. I stayed a moment longer, staring out at the range. Wind in my ears, sun on my shoulders, sand shifting under my boots. No suits, no champagne, no stories being rewritten, just the truth. I'd built something real here, and there wasn't a soul in this place who didn't know exactly who I was. By late afternoon, I was back in the command office. Sealed doors, no windows, fiber-locked comms. The hum of the servers ran like a pulse through the walls. Familiar, steady. I sat down, keyed into the terminal, and scanned the briefings for the next quarter. Surveillance protocols, rotation schedules, encryption protocols for new recruits. Routine, but necessary. Then the ping, an unsecured message from my personal inbox. Subject line, lunch with a senator. I opened it. Morgan had an interesting chat at the Rotary luncheon today. Sat next to Senator Raines. Turns out he knows you. Spoke very highly. Said you've saved more international deals than any spreadsheet ever could. I guess I might have misunderstood what you do all these years. Sounds like you've made a name for yourself. Hope we can catch up soon. Dad, no apology, no ownership. Just vague praise filtered through someone else's mouth. Like he couldn't say the words unless a senator handed them to him. I read it twice. Might have misunderstood. Not I was wrong. Not I dismissed you. Just enough distance to protect his pride and still ride the echo of someone else's respect. I typed a short reply. We can talk sometime. Then I deleted the message. No anger, no satisfaction, just done. Quick question. What would you have replied? Or would you have answered at all? Drop your answer in the comments. I leaned back in the chair and let my eyes drift to the shelf beside the screen. One framed photo, no plaques, no awards, just 7 of us, standing in sand and wind, half squinting at the camera like we didn't have time for the moment but took it anyway. Jake was off to the left. I was center. Every face in that photo knew exactly what we'd done, what we'd built. No need to prove it. I turned back to the screen. One new folder had popped up in the secure feed. Phase Echo, red-coded, multi-regional, high-level engagement, my kind of work. I opened the briefing. Data loaded, lines of intel spilling in, clean layout, tight objective. My fingers hovered over the keys, ready to dig in. This was it. The work. The legacy. Not the one my father needed to brag about. The one that would stand, quiet, permanent, understood by the only people who ever mattered. These were my people. This was my piece.